Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we look at another model in my classic computer collection. And today we're going to look at the Commodore VIC-20. Now let me just set this model in an historical context for you. The year's 1980, and computer manufacturers were starting to become interested in what seemed to be a new market, and this was the home computer market. Now up to that time, computers tended to be sold to adults, individuals, and they were mostly used, they're mostly hobbyists or used for business. Now, one or two computers were being sold to families, and the Atari 400 is one I can think of, but it really wasn't a market that existed to any great extent. So the idea with this home computer market was to sell computers to families. Now, in order to do that, the computers really had to satisfy four criteria. First, they needed good sound and graphics. Second, they needed to be colour. Third, they needed to plug into the family television. And fourth, they needed to be cheap. So the idea was that families would buy them and they could be used by the whole family, not just the adults, but the kids as well, for entertainment and education purposes. And perhaps, some sort of home management purposes as well. So Commodore was very interested in this market, having started with the Commodore PET and that being, being modestly successful. And they entered this market aggressively with the Commodore VIC-20. So let's have a look at it. Now, as you can see in this advertisement, the VIC-20 was sold as a cheap and cheerful, low-cost computer, and much was made of its colour and sound capabilities, and that was really the thing that separated it from the TRS-80 Model 1 or 3, the earlier Commodore models like the PET, and the ZX81 Timex Sinclair 1000, and of course its price. Now, I'm not sure if this advertisement shows the starting price in the US or not, but Jack Trammell, who was the owner of Commodore, always priced the unit very aggressively, dropping the price steadily as the product matured and as new competitors steadily appeared on the market. Now, in order to get traction in the marketplace, Commodore used this man in an advertising campaign to encourage parents to boldly go where no man had gone before. And the angle was this. At that time, video game machines were popular in homes, especially in the USA. Now, William Shanter argued, well, why buy your kids a video console when for the same price you could buy them a real computer? In other words, a real computer for the price of a toy. So this was the message, and with aggressive pricing the strategy worked, with the VIC-20 being the first computer model to sell more than 1 million units. Now, unlike the USA, we never saw ads for home computers on television here in New Zealand. Initially, ads in print were pretty low-key about the machine, such as this one, placed in a national computer magazine by my local computer store. This would be about late 1982. However, in later years, we saw larger and flashier ads as Commodore started to get a real presence here. Just for reference, $1 New Zealand was buying about 50 cents US at this time. But note the prices in this ad. Now, this reflects the strategy of breaking down the components into separately priced units. The ads say the computer cost $899. Sounds cheap, but you can't do a lot with it without a data cassette unit. And at $149, this makes the full package closer to $1,100, which is a little bit more than people's initial impression. So let's have a look now at my particular VIC-20 unit. Here it is set up specifically for this video. Now, it's not quite authentic. The unit and the tape deck are true to type, but the power unit, you might notice, is from a Commodore 64. This was a later Commodore machine, and the TV is pretty modern, probably around the early 2000s. When I got this unit, it was a cheese yellow colour. A retrobrite certainly made a difference, as you can see in this before and after photo. But around the edges there are still a few yellowish patches, and you'll see some of these in the coming close-ups. Now, this was probably due to the different amounts of retrobrite paste and sunlight exposure on the side and the back areas, as opposed to just on the full surface. So one of these days I'll redo the case and see if I can get it back to a complete cream colour. So looking at the side view, moving from left to right, we have a joystick port, an on-off switch, and a power socket. Now the power socket reveals this is a later variant of the VIC-20. The original machines had a 2-pin socket rather than that DIN socket you could see there. Luckily, this socket on the second variant is compatible with the Commodore 64 power pack, and that's why I can get away with using one. Moving around the back, we come to a large card-edged socket. Now this was used for program cartridges and or memory expansion. The slot was pretty tight, or tended to be pretty tight, and could require some force to slot the cartridge home sometimes. In the middle of the rear we have 2 DIN sockets. The left-hand one gives colour composite output, which allows the computer to be plugged into a colour monitor, or plugged into an RF modulator, which could then be plugged into a television. Now the VIC-20s were always sold with this external RF modulator, as it was assumed that, in the first instance anyway, the VIC-20 would be used with a family television. Socket on the right was for connecting a disk drive and or a printer. It was a serial version of the IEEE 488 bus found on the Commodore PET. Finally, we come to the cassette recorder card edge on the left and a user port on the right. In the US, a popular accessory was often plugged into the user port, the VIC modem, which allowed users to explore the world of online telecommunications. Unfortunately, here in New Zealand, phone lines were tightly regulated in the early 1980s, and the VIC modem didn't have the same impact. Things did start to relax towards the mid-80s, but by that time the VIC-20 had had its day. So opening up the case, we can see the slim motherboard, which fairly small and has a reduced number of chips if you can compare it with older computers, say like the Apple II. Chips of interest there are the CPU, which is a 6502 of course, a couple of ROM chips, and in the middle, covered with an aluminium cap, is the VIC chip itself. So this image shows it with the cap, the small aluminium protective cap removed. You can see the VIC chip, and this provides the video and sound of the VIC-20. And the computer was essentially built around this chip, and of course named because of it. So how would programs get into the VIC-20? Well, you could use a disk drive, but these are expensive items costing as much as the computer itself. And most people, at least here in New Zealand, either used cartridges with preloaded ROM-based software, such as this one, or more commonly they loaded programs from a specific cassette recorder or data set, as Commodore called it. So here's mine. The programs came on audio tape. Now, one interesting fact is that while many other computers could use any old cassette recorder, the VIC-20 and the PET preceding it required a specific proprietary cassette recorder designed for recording data, the data set. Now, one advantage of this was that it tended to be more reliable for loading and saving programs than more general units. So that was a big plus. Rather than getting the programs on cassette, tape, or a cartridge, there was the last resort of typing a program in from a magazine. Now, at that time, a listing of programs for the VIC-20 would appear in magazines that supported the machines. Typing them in was a painful process, exacerbated by the small screen real estate. Hence, lines were quite hard to distinguish from one another. The PET graphic characters, which needed to be input from key combinations, weren't easy to distinguish from a listing. And then with the amount of pokes requiring numbers, which left no room at all for error. Here's an example of code from a random game, and you can see what I mean. VIC-20 basic programs needed a lot of poke commands, and this was because the BASIC itself had no specific commands for using the VIC chip. In fact, it was more or less the same BASIC found in the earlier Commodore PETs. So for the programmer, this made using the graphics and sound features embedded in the VIC-20 quite difficult. Okay, so it's time to fire the VIC-20 up, so I'll switch it on. I'll show you a screenshot, but the camera doesn't show the contrast very well on the screen. So there's the live shot, so 3,583 bytes free, 3.6 K of memory, which is tiny. This is a screenshot from an emulator, and it shows the sort of contrast that you actually see with the naked eye on the screen, and just gives you an appreciation of how it boots up. Now, go to have a look at this game. This is Snackman. It's a clone of Pac-Man, designed to run in the unexpanded VIC-20. An interesting thing about this is the case. Computer games, programs for the VIC-20 were typically sold in these types of cases, at least here in New Zealand. And when you have a good look at the case, let me just remove the cassette and the plastic inlay, you'll see the case actually wasn't designed for computer programs. It was designed to hold VHS video cassettes. So it's an interesting reuse of an existing artifact to supply this packaging for computer programs. So this is how you load a program into the VIC-20. We just type load, push return key. It tells me to push the play on the tape. So we'll go over there and insert the copy of the cassette, push the play button, and away we go. So it looks for the game. I've shortened the time down here. It usually takes more than just a few minutes to load, but very soon so here you can see Snackman's almost an exact clone of Pac-Man, even down to the sounds. So we've got our normal artifacts, we've got our ghosts that are trying to kill us, we've got fruit we can eat, we've got energy balls we can munch up, we can chase the ghosts at various times and eat them up. Quite a fun game. If you're a younger person watching this and you've never played this game, give it a go. It's very, very easy to follow. It's a simple game, but quite challenging. But what I find remarkable about this particular game on the VIC-20 is that we're talking about something that fits into less than 4K of memory. And that's quite remarkable when you consider what it does, to have a program that small that gives you this sort of experience is, I really find quite remarkable. So I've just about cleaned up, a few more energy balls to go, and I'll get myself a new screen. So there we go. That's Snackman on the VIC-20. Now, just turning to some of the manuals and literature I got with the machine. There's this one on the cassette unit. Nice little tidy manual. You can see there the back of a Commodore PET. The dataset could be used on one of those. Fairly short, not really much to it, just some instructions on the basic operation. So really just a few pages, but shows the uninformed how to use the thing. Next we've got the main manual for the machine. So this is how to use the computer, personal computing on the VIC, and like a lot of manuals in the day, it was written with the assumption that people hadn't come into contact with computers before. So after a bit of explanation of how to set up the VIC-20, talks about how it operates, the screen and the keyboard, and then goes through some of the basic commands, talks about basic programming, how to get it to do various sound and vision tricks. So this preface gives you an idea about the approach. It's quite friendly, lots of diagrams, drawings, illustrations to try and make it as simple as possible. And again, like a lot of other manuals for these home computers, uses little character diagrams there of representation of the computer, just to give it that sort of whimsical and friendly appearance. Yeah, it's fairly comprehensive in that it's got the sort of things you'd expect in the appendices, so, character set, memory map, this type of thing. Yeah, not a bad manual to get you acquainted with the computer and about what you'd expect with these home computers. So that's personal computing on the VIC-20. Next we have a very simple guide. This is how to connect your VIC, and it's essentially just a series of steps to get your VIC connected to a television or a VDU, and so you can get up and running. Just 2 pages, 12 steps in all, and on the back you've got a handy troubleshooting guide just in case things don't seem to be working. I've also got this set here. This is an introduction to BASIC part 1, and this is a box tutorial. Now it comes with a manual, and the original package would have come with a few cassettes, but I don't have the cassettes, I just have the manual. Now, unlike the user guide, which is really a demonstration of some of the features of the computer, this is more of a tutorial. So it's divided into a number of units that people can work through gradually. So it's designed to teach people or users how to program on the VIC-20. So in some ways it's a lot more useful than the user manual if you want to get into programming the machine as opposed to simply just using it. So you can see there the units, they're all broken down into particular themes. I don't know what part 2's like, and I can't tell you what the cassettes had on them because I just have the manual, but looks like an interesting package. Now this screenshot concerns the last bit of literature I've got for the VIC-20. I've got a manual on Scott Adams' games. Now, Scott Adams produced a number of text-based adventure games for early microcomputers, and when Commodore bought the VIC-20 out, they asked him to port some of his games onto this platform. Now, they didn't use any of the colour or sound or graphics of the VIC-20, but nevertheless, they were games that were available immediately. The model went on sale that people could use, and they were well-known games for microcomputers. So here's the manual I've got, the VIC-20 Scott Adams Adventure Games, and it talks about these types of adventures. So what you really need to do to play them, the sort of commands you might want to use. These are things like the Count, Adventureland, Mission Impossible. There were various other adventures you could play. So it goes through, in a generic sort of sense, how you would play one of these adventures, how you save the game, how you load it, the importance of map making, because all of these adventures had locations that you had to go to, and so it was important that you sort of keep a map of where you were and what direction you would go and to get around. It finishes up with a nice little summary. So pretty useful. I am on the lookout for a Scott Adams cartridge to add to the VIC-20 collection, but haven't found one yet. Here's just a bit of humorous VIC-20 trivia to finish off. In New Zealand we have a comedy program called The Flight of the Concords. Now some of you might have seen this because it's been broadcast overseas. It's about a duo of musicians trying to make it big in New Zealand. And here we see, it's set in present day, and here we see Murray, their hapless manager, and in the background there you can see Murray's office computer, which is actually a VIC-20. So I'll put a link to a short YouTube clip which shows that VIC-20 in use, but it just adds to the humour of the program and certainly made me laugh when I saw it. Well, I hope this video has given you a little bit of information on the VIC-20. For those of you that didn't know too much about it, it's a classic computer, as mentioned, one of the very early computers, which not by itself, but certainly it was one of the team that helped define the home computer market of the early 1980s. So that's it today. Until next time, keep well, and we'll see you in the next video.